The bells had been ringing for so long that the silence afterward still hurt. Daenerys Targaryen stood on the steps of the Red Keep and looked out over a city that could not decide whether to cheer, weep, kneel, or run. Smoke rose in thin gray ribbons above the rooftops. The harbor was clogged with broken hulls. Lion banners had been torn down and ground into the mud. Yet the people of King's Landing did not rush forward to kiss the hem of their new queen's gown. They watched from doorways and windows, from alley mouths and the shadows of wagons. Their faces were thin, their eyes were hollow. Too many kings had fallen for them to believe easily in saviors. Drogon crouched behind her, black wings folded like a storm that had not yet decided to open. Rhaegar perched on a shattered tower, green scales dull beneath ash. Viserion circled high above in slow, pale sweeps, his shadow sliding across roofs and frightened faces. Daenerys had taken the city. That was the first live victory, told her. The Iron Throne waited inside the keep, but the realm did not. The realm bled in the streets. The realm hid children under cellar boards. The realm whispered that dragons made queens faster than mercy ever could. So she did not go first to the throne. She walked down the steps, through the scorched gate and into the crowd. Sir Barristan Selmy kept pace at her left, white cloak stained with soot. Grey Worm marched at her right, spear steady. Missandei followed a step behind, calm face touched with grief as she looked at the hungry and the wounded. Tyrion Lannister limped at the edge of the Queen's guard, mismatched eyes taking in every broken stone with the quiet misery of a man who had loved and hated the same city for most of his life. Daenerys stopped in front of a woman clutching a small boy against her skirts. The woman flinched. The child did not. He stared up with solemn courage, face streaked black from smoke. "Are you afraid of me?" Daenerys asked. The woman looked ready to lie. The boy answered first. "Yes." Daenerys knelt. Gasps moved through the crowd. Queens did not kneel in mud. Conquerors did not lower themselves before bakers' sons and beggars' daughters. "You are right to be afraid," she said. "Fire came to your gates, men died, walls broke, a crown changed hands. I cannot command your fear to vanish." The boy swallowed. "Will you burn us?" "No." "Will your dragons eat us?" A faint, aching smile touched her mouth. "Not if you do not try to eat them first." A few people laughed because they had forgotten how. The sound came out cracked and uncertain. Daenerys took a loaf from a basket carried by an unsullied and placed it in the woman's hands. "Open the granaries," she said, rising, voice growing stronger. "All of them, the stores of the Red Keep, the guild vaults, the seized Lannister wagons, the Tyrell grain barges still in the harbor. Food belongs to the city before it belongs to the crown." Tyrion looked at her sharply. "Your grace, that will empty your winter stores. Then we will fill them again." "With what?" "With the gold the lions hoarded, with the harvests that were taxed from hungry mouths, with tribute from lords who preferred war to bread." She turned so the whole street could hear. "Let every alley know this. Any soldier who steals from the small folk loses his hand. Any lord who hides grain while children starve loses his lands. Any man who claims to act in my name while harming the innocent will learn that dragons are not the only fire I command." The people did not cheer, but they listened, and that was the smallest seed of rule. A horn sounded from the river gate before dusk. Jon Snow entered the city on a black horse, Ghost padding beside him like a piece of the north that had refused to stay behind. He wore no crown, no jeweled cloak, no southern silk. He looked as if the cold itself had walked into the ruins, dark, tired, stubbornly alive. Daenerys saw him from the courtyard and for one breath forgot the city. He dismounted in front of her. Around them soldiers watched, Northmen, Unsullied, Dothraki, freedmen, sellswords, and former Lannister guards, waiting to see what the Dragon Queen and the Wolf Lord would be to each other now that the war had changed shape. Jon bowed, but not too low. "My queen." Daenerys hated the distance in those two words, even as she understood why he placed it there. Before armies they belonged to duty. In silence they belonged to each other. "Lord Snow," she answered, because she could wound him as gently as he had wounded her. His mouth twitched. "Still that, until you offer me a better name." "Jon, that is the best name you have." "It has served." She stepped closer. "Did the northern host secure the King's Road?" "Aye, your outriders were thorough. The last Lannister men who wanted to die for Cersei found courage easier before they saw the dragons." "And Cersei?" Jon's face hardened. "Alive." The courtyard went quiet. Tyrion shut his eyes for a moment. Jaime Lannister, standing under guard near the gate with his sword surrendered and his golden hand bare, stared toward the keep as if he could see through stone. Alive meant trouble, alive meant poison in a cup, a knife in a sleeve, a lie whispered into the right ear. Alive also meant a choice. Bring her to the throne room, Daenerys said. The Iron Throne was smaller than the fear of it and uglier than the songs. Blades curled together like frozen screams. The room smelled of smoke, old blood, and rainwater leaking through cracked roof tiles. Daenerys did not sit. Cersei Lannister was brought in wearing a torn gown of dark red. Her hair had grown uneven around her face. Defeat had not made her less proud, it had carved pride down to bone. Jaime came with her under guard. Tyrion stood near a pillar. Jon remained at Daenerys' side. The room held too many ghosts: Aerys, Robert, Ned Stark, Joffrey, Tywin, every dead dream that had ever mistaken this chair for peace. Cersei looked at the throne and smiled. You have not sat, afraid it will cut you. I know it cuts everyone. Then you are not entirely foolish. No, only foolish enough to spare you until I heard you speak. Jaime took a step forward. Daenerys. Grey Worm's spear crossed his chest. Daenerys never looked away from Cersei. You held the city, you starved the poor, you used wildfire beneath streets where children sleep, you crowned yourself while the realm broke around you. And you brought dragons, Cersei answered. Shall we count sins by the corpse or by the crown? Tyrion's voice was low. Cersei, do not. Do not what? Tell the truth. She wants them to love her. They will love bread today, fear fire tomorrow, and pray for her death when taxes rise. That is rule. Daenerys stepped closer. That is what you were taught rule was. That is what rule is. Jon spoke then, quiet as snow. No, it is what rule becomes when no one stops it. Cersei's eyes slid to him. The bastard wolf, or not a bastard perhaps, the realm gossips even while it burns. A ripple passed through the room. Daenerys felt it like a blade under silk. Jon did not move. Cersei smiled wider. Ah, so the secret is true. Rhaegar's hidden son brought home by a northern lie. What a song, what a threat. Tell me, Dragon Queen, do you mean to wed him before or after his claim devours yours? Drogon roared outside. Dust fell from the rafters. Daenerys lifted one hand and silence returned. You still think every bond is a chain, she said. Every love a weakness, every child a weapon. Cersei's gaze sharpened. For the first time something like uncertainty moved beneath her face. Daenerys placed her palm against her own stomach. She had not meant to reveal it here, not before lords and guards and enemies, not before knowing whether joy could survive the weight of crowns. But Cersei had filled the air with poison, and poison had to be burned clean. I carry a child, Daenerys said. The room changed. Jaime looked at Jon. Tyrion went pale. Jon stared at Daenerys as if the world had vanished around her and left only a heartbeat. His face opened with wonder, fear, love, and terror all tangled together. Cersei laughed softly. Then the game begins again. No, Daenerys said. Then the game ends with me. She turned to Grey Worm. Cersei Lannister will not die today. Death would make her a martyr to every lord who fears change. She will not remain in this city either. She will be sent under guard to Casterly Rock, stripped of crown, council, command, and correspondence. She may live where her house began, with enough servants for dignity and enough walls to remember what she built. Cersei's smile curdled. A cage. A mirror. You think mercy makes you better. No, I think mercy gives the realm fewer graves. Cersei looked at Jaime. For all her cruelty, all her venom, something raw passed between them. Jaime bowed his head. Daenerys understood then that the worst punishment for Cersei was not exile. It was being witnessed without power. The queen turned to him. Jaime Lannister will keep his life because he rode north when death rode with winter. He will not command armies. He will not hold a lordship. He will remain in King's Landing as a sworn shield to the innocent he once failed. Jaime gave a bitter laugh. You would make a Kingslayer guard children. I would make a man become more than the worst name he has carried. Jaime looked at Tyrion, then at Brienne of Tarth standing near the doors in blue steel and white cloak. Shame and hope crossed his face so swiftly that only those who knew pain could see it. I accept. After the prisoners were taken away, Jon followed Daenerys into the painted chamber where maps lay beneath dragonglass weights. The door closed behind them. For a moment neither spoke. Then Jon crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. You should have told me, he whispered. I wanted to. When there was no war, no crown, no throne, no dead city listening. His hand trembled as he touched her stomach. Is it true? Daenerys covered his hand with hers. Yes. Jon lowered his forehead to hers. I have fought dead men, wildlings, traitors, and kings. I have died and come back. I have never been more afraid. She laughed through sudden tears. Good, then we are matched. He kissed her not as a king kisses a queen in the sight of a realm, but as a man kisses the woman who has become his home against all reason. When he drew back, his eyes were shadowed. Cersei will spread the truth of my birth. She already has. The North will not bend easily to a Targaryen child. It may bend to yours. That is worse. They will say I should rule. Do you want to? No. The answer came so swiftly that Daenerys believed it. Jon looked toward the map. I want the living to remain living. I want my sisters safe. I want children to grow up without learning which banners mean hunger. I want to stop being handed crowns like punishments. Daenerys touched his cheek. Then stand beside me, not behind, not beneath, beside. Some will call me weak. Let them. Weak men rarely frighten lords enough to make them whisper. He smiled faintly, then grew serious. And if they choose me against you? Then you will refuse them. I will. And if they choose our child against us? Jon's silence was answer enough. The first council of the new reign gathered beneath a roof patched in haste and hope. Tyrion became hand because no one understood the rot of the old realm better than a man born inside its golden halls. Davos Seaworth took charge of ships and grain. Missandei spoke for the freed peoples and the foreign soldiers who had crossed the sea for Daenerys. Grey Worm commanded the city watch until local captains could be trusted. Varys kept his place at the edge of the light, useful and dangerous. Brienne stood for oaths. Samwell Tarly, summoned from the citadel with ink on his sleeves and worry on his face, was asked to build a true record of law, debt, harvest, and death. Sansa Stark arrived after the rains. She entered the throne room in grey wool and northern fur, hair bright as autumn leaves, face as guarded as Winterfell's walls. Arya came with her, silent, watchful hand never far from needle. Bran was carried in later, eyes distant and knowing, as if he had arrived before everyone else and merely waited for the room to notice. Daenerys met Sansa beneath the throne but did not sit above her. Lady Stark. Your Grace. There was courtesy in the words and frost beneath them. Jon embraced Arya first. She clung to him fiercely for a heartbeat before becoming a blade again. Sansa accepted his embrace with more restraint, but her fingers tightened on his cloak. Bran only looked at him with old sorrow. You look tired, Sansa said to Jon. I am. You always are. Daenerys watched them and felt an ache she had not expected. She had dreamed of family as something that would welcome her like sunlight. The Starks loved like winter deeply, fiercely, and with gates locked until trust earned entry. At council, Sansa spoke before anyone could flatter or threaten her. The North bent the knee to Jon. Jon bent the knee to you. That does not make northern grief vanish. We fought the dead while southern houses waited. We buried children before we buried kings. If you want loyalty, do not ask us to pretend nothing was paid. Daenerys nodded. I will not. You will want men, grain, coin, obedience. I will want peace. Every ruler calls their wanting peace. Tyrion rubbed his brow. Lady Stark has not grown less direct. She has grown less killable, Arya said. Davos stifled a laugh. Daenerys walked to the map table. The North will keep its laws, its gods, its lords, and its wardens. No southern tax will be levied until winter stores are counted by northern stewards. No dragon will fly over Winterfell without invitation. The men who fought the dead will be released from royal service unless they choose to remain. Sansa narrowed her eyes. Generous, necessary, and independence. The word struck the room like steel. Jon looked down. Daenerys had known the question would come. She had rehearsed answers that sounded wise and merciful. None of them survived Sansa's gaze. The realm cannot fracture while winter still grips the roads, Daenerys said. But neither will I bind the North by fear. When the harvest returns and the dead are burned from memory enough for clear thought, the North may call a council of its houses. If they choose independence, then we will speak of terms without swords in the room. Sansa studied her. You would allow the question. I would rather rule those who choose the realm than chain those who hate it. Bran's voice drifted from his chair. Chains remember hands. Everyone looked at him. Arya shrugged. He does that now. Sansa did not smile, but something in her face eased. Then the North will wait, not kneel in heart perhaps, but wait. It is a beginning, Daenerys said. That night she found Jon in the godswood of the Red Keep. It was a poor godswood, southern and strange, with no weirwood heart tree, only dark leaves whispering over cracked stone. Ghost lay at his feet. Jon looked up when she came. You gave Sansa more than I expected. I gave her less than she wanted. That is how peace often begins. Daenerys sat beside him. She hates me. She mistrusts you. Is there a difference? With Sansa, a great one. Daenerys watched the leaves move. When I was a girl, I believed that coming home would heal everything. Westeros was a song Viserys sang badly. He made it sound stolen from us, waiting for us, loving us from afar. Then I came and it was mud, hunger, fear, debt, pride, ruins, and graves. Jon took her hand. Still home? I do not know. He brushed his thumb over her knuckles. Home is not always where blood began. She leaned into him, spoken like a man raised by Ned Stark. His face softened at the name. He lied for me and made himself dishonored. He loved you. Jon looked away. I used to think Catelyn Stark could not love me because there was something wrong with me. Now I know she looked at me and saw a wound she had not made but had to live beside. It does not make the pain vanish. It only gives it shape. Daenerys rested his hand over her stomach. Our child will not be raised as a wound. No. Not a claim, not a banner, not a debt to the dead. Jon's voice went rough. No. But the realm had already begun to make the child into all those things. Ravens flew before dawn. Some carried loyalty, some carried threats, some carried words so sweet Tyrion said they smelled of knives. The Reach wanted assurances that Dragonfire would not settle disputes between rival harvest lords. The Vale demanded protection for trade roads. The Riverlands wanted repayment for every army that had crossed their fields since Robert died. The Iron Islands wanted freedom to crown Yara Greyjoy without southern interference. Dorne sent warm words and colder questions. The Westerlands sent silence from every castle that still had lions carved above its gates. Then came the murders. A baker who accepted royal grain was found hanging from his own sign. A washerwoman who praised Daenerys at a fountain was dragged into an alley and beaten. An unsullied patrol vanished near the Street of Steel. The words painted on walls were always the same: no dragon child. Grey Worm wanted raids. Fear answers fear. No, Daenerys said, though fury burned behind her eyes. Fear breeds in dark places, drag it into light. Varys found the first thread: former gold cloaks, dismissed septons, Lannister loyalists, smugglers paid in old coin, and frightened men who had never loved Cersei but feared a foreign queen more. They called themselves no army. They wore no badge. They whispered that Daenerys would hatch monsters in the cradle, that Jon had been bewitched, that the child would drink blood and burn churches. Lies travel faster than ravens, Tyrion said. Then truth must learn wings, Missandei replied. Daenerys did what no one advised. She opened the Red Keep, not fully, not foolishly, but the outer court became a place where the city could come each morning with petitions. No lord stood between queen and small folk. No jeweled chamber swallowed their voices. Bakers, smiths, mothers, singers, fishermen, orphans, and wounded soldiers came beneath dragon-carved lintels and spoke. Some cursed her, she listened. Some begged, she answered. Some lied, Tyrion noticed. Some trembled too hard to speak. Missandei spoke gently until they could. A man whose brother had died under Dragonfire spat at Daenerys' feet. Grey Worm nearly struck him, but Daenerys lifted a hand. What was his name, she asked. The man shook with rage. Why, so you can carve it on a pretty wall. So I can know which ghost stands between us. The man's face twisted. He said the name. Daenerys repeated it, not perfectly, not with the accent of Flea Bottom, but she repeated it before the court and Sam wrote it down. By the end of the week, the Wall of the Dead began in the Red Keep's outer yard. Not only noble dead, not only soldiers, every name brought was inked, carved, and remembered. There were too many, there would always be too many, but the city came to look. Grief, given a place to stand, became harder to turn into rebellion. That frightened the conspirators more than dragons did. The attempt came during rain. Daenerys had refused to hide her condition, but neither did she flaunt it. By then the city knew. So did the realm. Some sent gifts: tiny boots from the north, a carved cradle from the Stormlands, a pearl-handled rattle from Dorne, a blanket from old women of the city who had once cursed every king and now argued over thread. Others sent curses wrapped as prayers. She was crossing the covered bridge between the Queen's apartments and the council tower when the lanterns went out. Grey Worm moved first. Missandei was pulled behind him. Jon drew Longclaw. Daenerys heard rain, boots, a muffled cry, and then the hiss of something flying past her cheek. Not an arrow, a dart. The guard beside her collapsed. Poisoned, Jon shouted. Shadows rushed from both ends of the bridge. Men in servant browns, faces wrapped, blades short and dark. They did not charge like soldiers, they came like butchers. Daenerys reached for the dagger at her belt, but Jon was already in front of her, ghost a white blur at his side. Grey Worm's spear punched through the first attacker. Missandei seized a fallen lantern and hurled it into another man's face. Daenerys stepped back, one hand over the life inside her, the other clenched around Dragonbone. A woman dropped from the rafters. Arya Stark landed behind the attackers as if the shadows had birthed her. Needle flashed, a throat opened, a wrist split, a knee buckled. Arya fought without flourish, each movement small and final. Brienne arrived from the far door in a crash of steel, Jaime behind her carrying a shield he had taken from the wall. Together they broke the ambush's spine. One attacker slipped past them. He was young, too young. His eyes were wide with terror and certainty. He lunged at Daenerys with both hands wrapped around a knife. She froze, not from fear of death but from the sight of him. He was a boy wearing hatred too large for his face. Jon struck him with the pommel of Longclaw. The boy fell hard and did not rise. Alive, Daenerys said. Grey Worm stared at her. He tried to kill you. He failed. Keep him alive. The poison killed the guard before dawn. The boy woke by noon. They questioned him in a small chamber with no windows. Tyrion expected defiance. Grey Worm expected silence. Daenerys expected hatred. What they found was grief. His father had died at the Blackwater. His mother had died in winter fever. His sister had vanished during the taking of the city. A former gold cloak told him the Dragon Queen's child would be born with wings and hunger. A septon told him killing her would spare thousands. Someone gave him a blade. Someone else promised him that his sister lived and would be returned if he obeyed. Who? Tyrion asked. The boy wept until he could not breathe. Varys found the answer before sunset. The boy's sister was dead. She had been dead before the promise was made. Daenerys went cold when she heard, "Bring me the men who used him." Grey Worm smiled without warmth, gladly. No torture. His smile vanished. Daenerys turned to him. Pain teaches men to say anything. I want truth. And then justice. The trail led beneath the city through old tunnels built by kings who trusted stone more than subjects. Arya guided them part of the way, moving through passages she seemed to know too well. Various little birds had grown older, but some still remembered where whispers nested. Davos found the smugglers. Brienne found the hired blades. Jaime found the gold. It was Lannister gold, but not Cersei's. Tyrion held the coin in his palm, staring at the stamped lion. My sister is many things, but subtle with grief is not among them. Then who? Daenerys asked. Jaime looked sick. A house does not die when its lord falls, it breaks into hungry pieces. The conspiracy had no single head. That made it worse. Proud cousins, dispossessed captains, pious fanatics, merchants afraid of freed slaves, lords who feared debt records, and frightened fools all pulled the same rope from different shadows. Cersei had not commanded them, but she had taught the realm the language they spoke. Daenerys ordered public trials. The city expected executions by fire. Lords arrived expecting spectacle. The accused expected screams. Instead they found Sam reading charges from parchment, witnesses protected behind screens, Tyrion arguing law, Davos asking plain questions no liar could survive, and Daenerys seated not upon the Iron Throne but on a wooden chair level with everyone else. Some were condemned to die by hanging. Men who had ordered murders bought children and planted poison. They received no mercy. Some were sent to the wall, though the wall was broken and the Night's Watch had changed into something stranger, a guard for the far north, a refuge for the guilty, and a witness against forgotten horrors. Some were stripped of rank and made to rebuild the streets they had helped drown in blood. Some, fools more than villains, were released under watch. The boy who had attacked Daenerys was brought last. He stood shaking before the court. Jon watched Daenerys carefully. So did Sansa, so did the city. You raised a knife against your queen, Sam Reed. The boy looked at the floor. Yes. You joined men plotting murder. Yes. You believed lies that my child was a monster, Daenerys said. Yes. Daenerys rose. Look at me. He did. I could kill you. Many would call it justice, some would call it wisdom, but you were made into a weapon by men who feared holding the blade themselves. I will not pretend you are innocent. I will not pretend you are beyond saving. The hall seemed to hold its breath. You will serve in the kitchens of the orphan house until those younger than you eat before you do. You will learn letters from Samwell Tarly. When you are grown enough to choose with a mind no liar owns, you may leave or remain, but you will live." The boy collapsed to his knees. The city remembered, so did the lords. Mercy did not soften Daenerys in their eyes, it made her harder to predict, and that made her dangerous in a way they did not understand. The Iron Throne became the next battle. Daenerys hated it more each day. Men looked at it and forgot the person standing near it. They spoke to the chair in their minds. Petitioners trembled before metal. Lords measured distance from the steps. Even allies lowered their voices as if swords welded by dragonfire could overhear. One night she entered alone, or thought she did. Bran waited in the shadows. "You should make more noise," Daenerys said. "I often hear that." She stood before the throne. "Did you know I would hate it?" "I know many things. Not all of them before they happened. That is almost comforting." Bran wheeled closer. "The throne is a story people agreed to fear. My ancestor forged it. With fire. And blood. Yes." Daenerys looked up at the blades. "If I destroy it, some will say I reject my house. Some already do. If I keep it, I preserve the sickness. Some sicknesses live in people, not chairs." She laughed softly. "You are less helpful than your brother." "I am less his brother than I was." "That sounds lonely." "It is quiet." Daenerys touched the cold edge of a sword. "What do you see when you look at my child?" Bran's pale eyes lifted. Snow falling on dragon eggs, a wolf sleeping beside a cradle, a woman with silver hair opening cages, a crown beneath water, a door that does not close. "Will my child live? I am not here to be a god to you." "No. Gods are crueler." Bran turned toward the doors. "Break what needs breaking, keep what needs keeping, know the difference before fire chooses for you." The next morning Daenerys summoned the realm. Not every lord came, but enough did. Sansa stood for the north, Yara for the Iron Islands. Gendry Baratheon came awkwardly from Storm's End, still learning how not to look surprised by his own name. Edmure Tully arrived from the Riverlands with grief in his shoulders. Robin Arryn came with Vale Knights and too much perfume. Representatives from Dorne came in bright silk with watchful eyes. The Reach sent stewards until its lordships settled. The Westerlands sent Jaime, because no other lion could enter the capital without starting a riot. The great hall filled. Daenerys entered with Jon beside her, not behind, not ahead. The murmurs began when she passed the throne and did not turn. "My lords, my ladies, people of Westeros," her voice carried. "This chair behind me was made to frighten kings into remembering conquest. It failed. It did not make rulers humble. It did not make the realm whole. It taught every lord who saw it that power was a blade pointed outward." She turned. Drogon's shadow crossed the broken roof. "I will not sit it." The hall erupted. Tyrion shouted for order. Davos shouted louder. Drogon roared once and silence slammed down. Daenerys continued. "The Iron Throne will be taken apart. Its blades will be reforged into plows, hinges, nails, and bells for the villages burned in war. A realm cannot eat fear. Children cannot sleep beneath a chair of swords." A lord from the Westerlands rose. "You would destroy the symbol of royal authority." "No, I would destroy the excuse." "And what replaces it?" "A council that meets each year, laws written and witnessed. Taxes counted in open ledgers, lords bound by the same justice they demand of peasants. The crown remains, but it will no longer pretend that blood alone is wisdom." Yara laughed. "Careful, Dragon Queen, talk like that makes highborn men seasick." Sansa's mouth curved slightly. Daenerys looked toward her. "The North will be granted the council it asked for when winter loosens. Until then, Winterfell rules itself in all matters not concerning war between kingdoms." Sansa inclined her head. "The North accepts the weight." Gendry stood next, face earnest. "The Stormlands will swear if roads are repaired and the small folk get seed grain before tourney funds." Davos beamed like a proud father. Edmure Tully rose. "The Riverlands ask protection from every army that thinks our fields are roads." "You shall have it," Daenerys said. Yara leaned back. "The Iron Islands want their queen recognized." "You are recognized. And our freedom." "Your freedom to rule your islands, yes. Your freedom to raid, no." Yara grinned. "Worth asking." The hall breathed, not peace, not yet, but something less brittle than fear. Then Jaime Lannister walked forward. Every hand twitched toward a weapon. He wore no gold armor, no crimson cloak. His missing hand was uncovered, his face looked older than his years and younger than his guilt. "The Westerlands owed debts," he said, "to the crown, to the Riverlands, to the city, to the dead." A murmur rose. Jaime looked at Daenerys. "Casterly Rock will open its mines to royal assessors. Lannister gold will rebuild what Lannister pride helped break." Some lord shouted, "You have no right." Jaime turned, "I have every right shame gives me." Tyrion's eyes shone, though he hid it behind his cup. Daenerys bowed her head to Jaime, not deeply but enough, the hall saw. That was the day the Iron Throne died. Drogon melted the blades while half the realm watched. Metal ran like black water. The heat drove spectators back, but Daenerys stood close enough to feel her skin prickle. Jon stayed beside her, one arm ready, though he knew no arm could shield her from dragonfire if dragonfire chose against her. When the last sword sagged, Daenerys whispered, "Let it end." But endings were only doors with better names. Her child came during a storm that shook the city windows and sent waves crashing over the harbor walls. The labor was long. Daenerys cursed in Valyrian, in the common tongue, and in languages Missandei politely pretended not to understand. Jon looked as if every cry stabbed him. Sansa waited outside with Arya, both pretending not to worry. Tyrion drank too much and prayed to gods he did not trust. Drogon prowled the courtyard until Grey Worm threatened to move the entire guard before the dragon crushed them by accident. Near dawn the child cried. A girl, small, furious, alive. Daenerys held her against her chest and wept with a force that frightened her. She had lost so much that joy felt almost violent. Jon sat beside her, trembling as he touched the child's dark silver hair, softer than milkweed. The babe opened dark eyes and wailed louder. "She has your temper," Jon whispered. Daenerys laughed weakly. "She has your scowl. She is perfect. She is loud. Perfectly loud." They did not name her for a throne. They did not name her for conquest, prophecy, or the dead demanding to live again through new flesh. They gave her a name from old Valyria and northern song, a name meaning dawn after frost. The singers would later argue over its meaning. The child cared only for milk and warmth. When the city bells rang for her birth, Daenerys flinched. Then she listened. These bells did not warn of surrender. They did not mourn a king. They rang because the city had survived long enough to welcome something new. Cersei heard those bells from Casterly Rock. Her raven arrived weeks later. It contained no blessing, only a small strip of parchment with a lion drawn in a shaking hand and a single line beneath it. A cage is still a cage even when gilded by mercy. Daenerys burned the parchment after Jon read it. "Does it trouble you?" he asked. "Yes." "Why?" "Because she is not entirely wrong." Jon sat beside her on the balcony overlooking the city. Their daughter slept in a cradle carved with wolves and dragons, watched by ghosts as solemnly as any sworn shield. Far below, hammers rang where the throne's metal was being remade. The first bells had gone to a rebuilt orphan house. The next batch would go to the river villages. Some swords became nails for roofs, some became plowshares, a few became hinges for prison doors because justice still required locks. Daenerys watched smoke rise from cookfires instead of burning homes. "I thought freedom was breaking chains, then I learned people can carry cages inside them: fear, hunger, old loyalties, old hates, crowns, names. And you?" "I carried the cage of being the last dragon." Jon glanced at the cradle. "You are not." "No," Daenerys smiled, "and that frees me more than ruling ever did." He took her hand. "What will you do with that freedom?" "Rule as if I will be answered, love as if I may lose, listen before fire, break fewer things than my enemies expect and more than my allies fear." "That sounds difficult." "It sounds like life." Below in the yard, the boy who had once tried to kill her carried bread into the orphan house. He had grown less hollow in the face. Arya watched him from a wall, pretending not to. Jaime crossed the courtyard with Brienne, both wearing plain white cloaks without jewels. Sansa prepared to ride north carrying agreements inked with law instead of sealed by fear. Tyrion argued with Sam over tax records. Missandei taught children letters beneath a fig tree someone had planted in defiance of the city's smoke. Grey Worm stood guard, but his spear rested lightly in his hand. The realm remained wounded. Lords still plotted. Winter still lingered in the bones of the roads. Cersei still breathed behind western walls. Beyond the sea, old powers watched the Dragon Queen with narrowed eyes. Beneath the ground, wildfire slept in forgotten chambers. In every castle, men who liked the world as it had been sharpened memories into weapons. But for that morning, the sky over King's Landing was clear. Daenerys lifted her daughter from the cradle and carried her to the balcony. The babe blinked at the sun, unimpressed by the realm she had already unsettled simply by existing. "This is not yours," Daenerys whispered to her. "Not the city, not the crown, not their fear. You owe them nothing but the chance to know you before they make you into a song." Jon stood behind them, arms around both. "And what will she be?" he asked. Daenerys looked toward the place where the Iron Throne had stood. There was only an empty dais now, swept clean. "Free," she said. The word rose with the morning wind, passed over broken towers and mended roofs, over bread lines and guard posts, over the wall of names and the yard where children chased each other around a dragon's shadow. It flew beyond the Red Keep, beyond the city, beyond the King's Road where ravens carried news north and south and east and west. Some who heard the news cursed it. Some feared it, some dared to hope. And in the ruins of the old realm, beneath the wings of dragons and the watch of wolves, Daenerys Targaryen began the harder conquest. Not of cities, not of thrones, not of enemies already beaten, but of the cruel belief that the world could never be remade. She had been sold, hunted, worshipped, betrayed, crowned, and feared. She had been called dragon, queen, foreigner, savior, invader, mother, monster. Now, with her child against her heart and Jon Snow beside her, she chose the name no one had given her. Free. The bells rang again. This time she did not hear surrender. She heard wings.